And welcome back to the Book and Life podcast. You're on with Crystal Fleming, and today I am completely blown away by this book that's coming out by this author. I read as much about it as I could. I know it's on my pre-order list, so when it comes out, I will be totally buying it. So I cannot wait to discuss this with this author, find out where she got this awesome idea, and just learn as much as I can before all of it comes out and and I'm last to know as usual, because I normally am. So before we get into that, you know the routine, listeners. We've got a little advert by Marianne Curley, and it's book 4 of the Time Guardian series, and it's called The Shadow. The battle is over, the war is won, the prophecy complete, but life can't just pick up where it left off for Ethan. Struggling to cope with tragic loss, at odds with friends in the Guard, he finds himself adrift, jumping at shadows and sensing someone who can't possibly be there. Blaming herself for Goddess Lathina's death, Giselle swears revenge and vilify the Immortals' plan for world domination. But Giselle hadn't planned on love, and that leaves her with an unbearable choice. Should she follow her heart, or the strings of a goddess short on praise but high on expectations, who continues to pull her from the grave? As the Guard and the Order battle through the past and into an impossible future, darkness lurks around every corner. The fight for the world's survival rests with just one. Is it friend or foe? Who stands in the shadow? And just a reminder to all those listeners out there, The Price of Freedom by Rosemarie Rao is going to have all its royalties donated to the Ukraine crisis, the refugee fund, and I believe her agent is also donating her commission to the same fund. So it's a really good thing that she's doing, and I really hope you guys go and check out her Roman British crime series. And it's gonna be for a good cause. Let's jump into our essentially mind-blowing guest. I've been waiting for this all day, and I've been so excited. So let's bring on Jessica Dodge.
Hello. How is everybody today?
So, I mean, this is the fun of being a podcast that's pre-recorded and released. We get to share all the juicy details between ourselves, and then the listeners find out later. So for once in my life, I'm not actually the last person to know things, which is very, very, very unusual for Crystal. Even my best friend, like, she'll find out about something, and then she'll be like, "Didn't you hear about this already?" And I'll be like, "No, you were supposed to tell me." "Oh, well, I've told you now," and I'm like the last person in the list. So that kind of tells you. I have that sad piece of work. I just admire the fact that you've done 15 years in the art industry.
Yes.
I am gobsmacked. I love that.
Yeah, I'm an artist, and that's what I do for my day job. So I do most of my work from home anyways, but during the pandemic, I obviously had a lot more time on my hands because we weren't going and doing things. So I ended up deciding to write a book and trying my hand at a different form of art.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about the pandemic. It really has gotten, in a way, all of us out of our comfort zones, and it kind of made us do things we wouldn't normally do.
Sure.
I hadn't knitted, sewed, or done crafts since I was a kid, because my gran was a professional knitter, and she was very much into textile and all that kind of stuff. And funnily enough, pandemic hit. Me and my mom, we started sewing and quilting, and we just sort of fell right back into it. It was like an old hat for us, and it was really awesome. So I love meeting fellow crafters and artists who kind of share that I would say it's like a draw for me. I wouldn't say a passion. I just get drawn to it constantly. It's my de-stressing mechanism for writing. So yeah, I love that. And I love the fact that you stay on a homestead. That was just wow for me.
Yeah, we live on 10 acres in Vermont.
That's a dream of mine. I would love to have that.
Yeah, we have 10 acres here in Vermont,
wow.
in
so
the forest. And it's great. We homeschool our kids here. I have an actual writing studio that's an old 1968 Airstream that I converted that sits on our property but isn't near our home.
Wow.
It's on the 10 acres. So I have a nice little private spot that I can go and get away, and I need like complete quiet to write. Like I can't write if there's any noise at all around me. It just throws me off. So I have to have that space, like that quiet space.
Yeah, I've met quite a few writers. I had a beautiful writer called Debbie Carr on from Jersey, and she's the same. She's got a little Wendy house kind of thing, like a little wooden house that she's got in her garden with some power to it, just so that she's got a light switch, and that's where she writes because she has to be away from all the noise and the lifestyle, and her dogs too. And she's, that I admire because I've never had that opportunity to have that peace and quiet because I grew up writing in hospital wards and my flat with my shared partners, so it was always noisy and busy. So I had to rely on the music to kind of shove everything out, and so that I can close out the world and just focus on what I'm writing. So it's lovely to hear that somebody is like, I had to have a place, and I made a place, because if I did that with my husband, I think I would get rehomed very fast. He, I don't think he would give me a private space to just go and be me, unfortunately. But no, I love that. So can you tell us like about The Forgotten Witch, and then tell us about what led you to writing it and what was the inspiration behind it?
So it's kind of a funny story. When the pandemic started, my husband started working from home. His job was he's a network engineer, so he was easily able to work from home on his computer. And we decided to open an Etsy shop. Our youngest daughter was very, very much into Harry Potter at the time. And so we started making these really fun little Harry Potter spell boxes, and somebody's like, you guys should sell those. Those are so cool. And so we decided to open an Etsy store and start selling them. And it turned into, we started doing a bunch of pagan and Wiccan spell boxes because we had people asking for them. And so we're like, okay, we'll start researching it. And so I ended up buying pretty much a library of books and researching and reading and doing all sorts of stuff into this specific kind of a religion, to be honest. And I was just totally thrown by how beautiful it was and how I just loved everything that came with this nature, letting nature just take over and like help heal you in a way, especially with everything that had been going on with the pandemic and, people being so sick. And it just was such an eye-opening thing. And then I also started doing a lot of listening to tons and tons and tons of audiobooks while I painted. And I got into Paula Braxton, and I absolutely loved her books. Like I listened to almost every single one of her books in a matter of like 5 months. I just was so obsessed with them. And
that happens. Yep. You start with one and you just fall into the whole. Yep.
Yeah. And when I read her last book, I was like, oh God, like, what am I going to do now? And then I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll try writing my own. Like, I really think that probably with the knowledge that I know now, I might be able to write a witchy book. And so I started researching. I'm a huge Scotland enthusiast. I was in a bagpipe band and I played the tenor drum, and I just love anything that has to do with Scotland, and my heritage is from there. And so I started doing a lot of research into the witch trials, and I came up with this idea for a book based on some historical figures. And I just started writing it, and I'm a pantser. I'm not somebody who writes my plots down. I just kind of go with the flow, sort of like I do with my art. And it just kind of flowed through me, and I was able to write the whole thing within 6 months.
That's amazing. And I mean, if you can get a book to just flow, that's the ultimate trick.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of us plotters, we plot because we will run into a wall eventually. At least that's been my case. So that's why we have boxes we can tick off so that we know when we hit a wall where we fit the wall and why. But I love that what you've said about that. And it's so funny you're talking about Scotland, because I'm actually in Scotland right now.
Woo!
I stay in Stirling, so I'm just down the road from Stirling Castle.
Nice.
Which always surprises my guests. They're like, really? Because you don't have a Scottish accent. Yeah, I do. I stay just down the road from Stirling Castle, but I came from Shetland, which was one of the, what they called sanctuary places.
Mm-hmm.
So we were a place that took in women that were on the run from the witch trials, and witch trials were not taking place in Shetland. So it was a safe place, and it became almost, because we were Viking descendants, Viking culture was still there, and they were able to come up and practice. They were told that there was rules about certain things, and you know, they were kind of made to understand the rules of the island, but once they did, it was really good, and it was really, really interesting. And what a lot of people don't know, and this is just the way, because history is written by the victors and not by everybody, but what they don't know is that a lot of the witch trials was really being pushed by the English, the royals and the churches and the court, because they wanted total control over Scotland, and they needed a way to oppress the people of Scotland into sort of doing exactly what they wanted and what they needed them to do, and to stop fighting them, which was the main thing. They wanted Scotland to stop fighting for independence and stop fighting to break free. So they used the witch trials as a tool to do that. And a lot of people do kind of connect to that. And, you know, because Scotland's been under, we're still not free. As far as we're all concerned, we're still not free. We're still under the English rule and under the English thumb. And that's why independence is so important to us. But yeah, it's really awesome. And I am excited to find out what part of Scotland you are connected into.
So Oban is the area, and Oban is where and it takes place. This story takes place there. So to be quite honest, I had so many crazy little things that happened when I decided that I wanted to write this book. I just almost like the universe coming in and saying, do it, like, do this book. I had bought a book called Scotland Folklore off of somebody on eBay, and it was a book that, like, you just couldn't find it anywhere anymore, and it had specifically to do with the area that I was writing about. And so it took me a really long time to find a book in that area of the Highlands that had all the information that I needed. And when I got the book and I opened it up, it was published on my birthday. So, which I thought was wow. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
That is a sign and a half, I'm telling you.
And so I was just like, wow, that's crazy. And then one of the other things that was really interesting is, after that, I said, I'm a person that, like, because I'm an artist, I think I have to have a lot of visuals around me when I'm writing. So one of the things that I did was I went on Etsy, and I looked for something that I could have either on me or in my hand while I was writing. And I found, and what I did was I typed in Oban on the search query, and a bunch of stuff came up, and there was a piece of sea glass fashioned into a necklace. And I was like, this is perfect. I'm going to buy this. And so it came in the mail, and I hadn't even noticed when I bought it that it was the exact shape of the state of Vermont, which is where I live. And it was green. And that's we're the Green Mountain State.
Cool.
And it wasn't until my husband said, he was like, oh my God. He's like, that is so cool. Where did you get that? And I explained it. He's like, that is very strange. He's like, this is exactly the shape of the state. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, you're right. And I was like, that is just another sign. And it just kept happening over and over again. I had things where I'd buy I bought another research book. I flipped it open, looked and started reading through it. It had been published in January 1982, which is my birth month on my birth year. And I just had so many things like that. And I was just like, This is a sign from the universe that this book needs to be written. So it really drove me. But yeah, so that, and I just, it's crazy how you can get these little signs and stuff. And I really think that it's important not to look past those things.
It is. You're very right. And I think Scotland is so magical. I think it gets everywhere. So if you ever get a chance to come over, you should visit Loch Ness, because the power and the magic is literally electrifying in the air. You can feel it. Like, as if you could almost reach out and touch it.
Yeah.
And the stories are so alive there. And if you ever get a chance to go to Shetland during the summer, don't go in the winter. The winter's awful. But if you go in the summer, there's the Northern Lights. I don't know if you've ever get them in Revant, but we've got Northern Lights that go across the sky.
Yep.
And the sun doesn't set at all. Not 1 hour is it down and away.
Wow.
It is light morning and night.
That's crazy.
From May through to September. It is a sight to be seen.
Wow.
And it is, again, Shetland is so magical because, you've got the Viking settlements that are still there, towns that are still there. We've got the mystery of, why did an entire village of Vikings disappear and leave everything exactly where they left it?
Yeah.
Like, you're talking about meals that were still set out, animals in their stalls, and all they found was a couple buried, but no sign of any of the other inhabitants.
Wow. That's a story that needs to be written right there.
If I had the talent, I would do it, but it's not one that I think I could take on quite successfully. But it's like everywhere you go in Scotland, it's so amazing. You really get sucked into it. And kids who are needing exposed to culture and some of the best architecture in the world is right here in Scotland. We have buildings literally built out of the ocean.
That's crazy.
From the ocean floor. That's in Shetland, and you can actually stay in the hotel, and when you're sleeping, you can actually hear the waves lapping up against the wall.
Sounds magical.
And it's so calming to hear that. It is. So yeah, I highly recommend it, because I always say to, if you've got teenagers, particularly teenagers, and you want them to actually be excited about art galleries and museums and stuff like that, always take them to Scotland, because they usually see all other teenagers who are excited to be in these places. And not only that, the magic of everything gets them so excited, and it's really great for people with sort of really high creative levels.
Yeah.
So I'll do a swap. I'll come to Vermont, and you come to Scotland.
Sounds good.
Switch.
Sounds good.
Yeah, because it's funnily enough, your state is on my list of places to go. Because I've done Los Angeles and I've done Philadelphia. I didn't like Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But I loved Los Angeles. I've got a lot of friends there. And I started writing through wrestling, so a lot of my friends are wrestlers. So yeah, Vermont is like the state they've all talked about. It's their favorite state to wrestle in, because it's so beautiful and peaceful.
It is.
And their lives are so hectic and crazy. It gives them a chance to just chill and regain their minds and just relax. So yeah,
that is something that we do very well.
They have talked me into it. Yeah, and I heard some of the best skiing is beside you too, so I would be interested in that. My husband might have a heart attack, but I'm actually quite interested in that because I'm clumsy. So, yeah, there's a lot to be said about a clumsy wife. I'm giving way too much away about myself there. Oh well. So I have to kind of almost ask, what is your dreams for this book? Is there do you have a set dream that you just picture in your mind when you see it coming out and readers getting it?
I mean, I just hope everybody loves it as much as I do. I really, really love the story. And I hope that people like it enough that they want to buy book 2, because I'm in the process of starting to write that now. And the story, even though I
like the sound of that.
Yeah.
You're cooking me on this.
Yeah. I wrapped up the story pretty well on book 1, but there is definitely a piece that needs to be told for book 2. So I think that, my biggest hopes for this book is that people are going to want to read book 2.
It's a weird question to ask a lot of people, because we as authors, we're always asked what's next. I don't know if you've experienced this yet, but everybody's like, okay, so you've done this. What are you going to do next? What's the next thing? And you honestly get a barrage of what, because it's always moving forward, kind of forward. So yeah, I'm excited because I signed up for your mailing list.
Yeah.
Because I really want to read the book, and I'm actually going to do this is something I've been holding back to tell you, actually, is I'm going to be doing a spotlight episode on it.
Awesome.
And it'll be about 30 minutes talking about the book itself, and about, because we do that to try and promote new authors and authors that are really kind of getting out there for the first time. So yeah, and it'll probably be, by this time, it'll be in October.
Yep.
That you'll have literally it'll be like 2 weeks or something between the interview, and then I'll do the spotlight, which, is kind of how this is all working out, because all the spotlights are starting in July, because I just spent 2 weeks in hospital.
Oh no.
It would have started this month if I hadn't had to stay in hospital, but yeah. That's the joy of living with arthritis. And funnily enough, that's how I got into writing, was because my body decided to tell me, hey, no, you're not going to be a wrestler. You're going to sit on your backside and tell stories all day.
At
whether
least you have a backup.
Or not. So yeah, I always have that's the one thing that drives my husband nuts. I have backup plans upon backup plans. And he's like, what's wrong with just going with the flow, Crystal? And I'm like, no, I can't do that. Like, no. And it's funny because he's like this guy from Glasgow. He's from the East End. He drives motorcycles. He drives buses. He's just totally not what you think an author would be like with, right? Like, he's totally different. And I'm barely 5'2".
Oh, I'm 5'2" too.
Quite a fiery Scottish woman, but I come. Hey,
short girls unite.
Us smaller people are taking over the world. Yeah, true. I know. Like, I'm always the smallest person in the room, so you have no idea how excited I am right now, or how happy I am. Sorry, put my little smallness problem away. That is something you will realize in Scotland. All of us are small, so all of us talk extra loud. Mainly because, and this is actually a true story, I was talking quite quietly to my friend in a shoe store, and I sat down on the stool, and I had stopped talking because I was listening to her, and this woman sat on me because she didn't see me.
Oh my God.
And I mean, full on sat on me and started to take her shoes off. And I'm like, I think I ended up screaming, "Excuse me." So now I make sure I'm extra loud so people don't just randomly sit on me. But yeah, it's a thing in Scotland. So us smaller women tend to, and we're more sought after too.
Yeah,
the guys over here, they like their little women, as they call us, the pretty women. They like to be able to, because I get called pocket sized.
Oh yes, I've heard that
for my partner, because he's 6'2", so he reckons I'd fit in his pocket. And I'm like,
my husband is 6'4", so I guess we like the tall guys.
We do like the tall. There is nothing worse. By the way, I have kissed a guy shorter than me. Okay, it was weird, and I didn't really know what to do with myself. I was like, because he kissed me on the train, and then I'm like, wait, do I kiss this guy back? Like, because it was real random. He just walked up, both hands on the side of my face, and just stalked me. And I was like, okay. I'm like 17 years old, completely bright-eyed, like student, trainee midwife. And I didn't know what to do. So I went on a date with the guy and I accidentally lost him in a supermarket because I managed to knock him into a freezer and didn't realize. So now and after that I refused to date anybody that was shorter than me. So when Ian came along at 6'2", he was perfect. And we dated less than a week and we moved in together.
Wow.
I left Shetland. I left everything behind and I moved to Glasgow. And we've been together pretty much every day for 14 years.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Pretty amazing.
So yeah, I'm a big person of science and romance. So my husband says I'm too mushy for anybody. He's like, thank God you're doing a podcast so I don't have to listen to your mushiness. You gotta love men sometimes. You gotta love men. So I've gotta ask, because you've been reading so much, what have you read recently that's really stuck with you?
I've read so much in the last couple of months. I think one of my favorite...
gotta pick one book.
Yeah.
One book and one character.
I think the one that probably stood out to me the most was, and this is not in the genre that I usually like to read either. Like, I really like fantasy, like magic kind of, books like the Rune series and stuff like that. But this was recommended by a friend of mine, and I took it on and I read it and I really, really loved it. It is A History of Wild Places. And I can't remember the author's name. Oh, I'm spacing on it. But
I've heard of that.
It's an excellent book, and I really liked it. It was like I said, it was a little bit of a different. It wasn't like a magical genre or anything like that. It was fiction, but it was a fantastic book, and I really loved the way that it was written. It kept me guessing right up until the very end, and it was just a really good book. I mean, if I had to choose a book in the realm that I normally read, I would probably say A Stitch in Time by Kelly Armstrong, I believe is who wrote that. Ooh. I really, really liked that book. That was a really good one. And
I know her. That's a good one.
Yeah, and I really liked.
Have you tried her other series?
No, I haven't. I've read through that whole series, but I just got into her because I just read that like a month ago, I think, those first two books, and I really liked them. I thought they were excellent books.
Trust me. Try Bitten.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Wow, is all I'm going to say, because Bitten leads into Stolen, and Stolen is what they call a quadra book.
Yeah.
So we've got demons, vampires, werewolves, witches, and a kind of really crazy scientist in book 2.
Yeah.
But that series is kind of long, but it's really amazing. And I love how the witches take over the series from the werewolves. So it's really good. I'm about to start book 3. But it's also a TV series on Netflix.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that, I think, previewed before. See, I really like long series because I go through lots and lots of books like while I paint, because I listen to a lot of audiobooks. So having a good long series is good for me.
Yeah. Have you tried Shirley Kennan? She has some most amazing fantasy novels. And you talk about a long series, she's just hit 30 books.
Oh my God. That's a long series. Yeah. No, I haven't actually read her yet. That I will have to put that down
so
on my to-be read list.
So you'll never run out of ones with her.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Yeah. When it comes to long series, I'm your girl.
Okay. I will make sure to come back and
I have a tendency to pick up the series that are really long. Yeah. Because I discovered Shirley Kennan 14 years ago. And I've been reading her pretty much ever since then. And then I also found Christine Freeham.
Mm-hmm.
Slightly scarier writer. The vampires are slightly darker, but again, really long series. And it really does keep you on the edge of your toes. That's a really good one. And the other one that I've just I'm just about to finish it, and it's another long series. It's called Throne of Glass.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I've seen those. I have seen that book.
Was an incredible experience.
Oh, yeah. I just was actually looking at a review.
Really long series.
I was just looking at a review for that. I think
we'll
the
have
other
to
day.
get you in that series.
Yes.
And you'll have to tell me what you thought.
I'm actually a really big horror fan too. I really like horror. I really love Stephen King. I love his son Joel Hill's books. He has one of my favorite books is Nosferatu that he wrote. I love that book.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a good one. I tend to like those in the fall. I really get into the fall, like scary books.
You want to... Yeah, I'm the same, funnily enough, actually. For good horror, actually, there's an author here in Scotland. I am too terrified to read him because I'm a bit of a wuss. But his name is Ian Banks. That guy can write horror. He literally rivals Stephen King.
Really?
And because my husband, he loves horror.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my husband cannot read a book if it's not gonna like get him gripped into like the depths of it really quickly.
Yeah.
But he reads Ian Banks and he just falls in love with every story that he reads from him. So if I ever can find an Ian Banks he hasn't read, I totally yes, gotta get it to him. Because my husband, unfortunately, shares the same name as James Bond, his writer, which is Ian Fleming.
Yeah.
So bless him, when he introduces himself to people now, he's super nervous because he's always like, are they going to realize that my name's the same as like Bond? Because he always gets Bond jokes. And
I bet.
But now people have realized he's the same as Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, so he gets a lot of the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang songs sung at him as well.
I love that movie. That was one of my favorite movies when I was little.
Crazy. But it's weird, yeah. I didn't put it together until recently, and this little girl was started singing the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang song because she put it together, and I'm like, wait, am I dense that I didn't put that together? I've been with him for 13 years or something, and I'm like, okay, Crystal needs a holiday or something. There's a wire loose here. So yeah, you probably will get a lot of book recommendations because that's just kind of how the show tends to work. But it's good because we're all authors sharing our own tastes and thoughts and stuff, especially with the listeners. So it's really good. And I'll probably recommend yours to 50 or 60 people after this because that's kind of, we'd pass it on. It's kind of a really cool way of doing things.
Yeah.
So I know you being a mom and an artist full time means you have no time for yourself. But if you had time to just sit and read a book and really enjoy it, and it can be a series or an author, but you can only have one. You can only have an author or a series.
Okay.
And you got to pick one, and you got to tell us why you picked that. Okay? So this one's slightly a harder question for, I always say, for the reader side of us.
I think that it would be Paula Braxton still, even though I've read all of her books. I would love to read them all again. I just love them so much. The Silver Witch was by far my favorite out of hers, which I think is strange because it doesn't seem to be the standout one of her books that most people like, but I just really connected with that book and I loved it. I think I've actually read that book 3 times now. But I don't think I could ever tire of it. It's just one of those books that I just absolutely adore. And every time I read it, I pick up something different and it hits a different spot for me. But yeah, and I really loved her all of her books. So I think that I would probably I would love to just sit down and reread them all.
Well, that's a really good answer because, if you find somebody that you love that can do that for you, that's what true pleasure of being a reader and a book lover is. And I mean, I've been in parts of I've got book boxes. I get Fairy Loot, which is a fantasy young adult / adult book every month, and it's got swag in it, and it's got all this cool stuff. But I still have a tendency to go back to the people that I know really well and I love to read. So like Rachel Kane's Morganville Vampire series is one of my favorites. So I'll go back because to me, an idea of a vampire who loves physics and wears fluffy bunny, slippers that are actually fluffy bunny vampire slippers, to me just seems cool. And like the idea that he can't live without these slippers is just like extra amazing. But she also gives him sort of mental health issues too, so you kind of almost never know what he's going to be like when this poor girl goes in. And that's a great series. It's quite long too, that one. That's over, I think, 12 or 13 books. So
wow, that's a good size.
It's a really awesome one. And that's one you can actually give your teenage daughter too, because it's YA, and it's actual YA, not fake YA. Which is a topic I've had to discuss earlier this week. So this is going to be a bit of a harder question. Is there an author, past and present, who's A, inspired you to read, and B, influenced your reading? And then the sort of D and C of this is who influenced you to start reading and who inspires your reading?
Well, I mean, I'm probably going to fall back on the Paula Braxton thing again. I know I have to said her much, but she definitely was my
okay.
She was definitely my inspiration in reading. I got into her books, and the first book that I actually read of hers was a newer book, which was The Shop of Found Things, and that's a series it's really good, and I loved it. And then after I finished that, I was like, okay, what am I going to read next? And then I went into other stuff, and of course, that led me into a barrage of other authors, because when you read through or you listen on Audible, they give you recommendations on other authors that are in similar genres and things like that. So I ended up reading a lot from just her books, of other authors. And, she really inspired my writing too. And she's actually recently come out with a book that she wrote with her brother, and The Witch's Night, which is excellent. And I'm in the midst of reading that right now. I'm almost done it. And I love it. And I think they make an excellent writing team. This is going to be a series too. It sounds like it's going to be a trilogy. So, I'm looking forward to reading the next two that come out in that. And that's actually a bigger book than, it's a little bit of a thicker book than she's used to writing. So, it was her brother I believe it was her brother's idea, to start this, and they developed it together. And then she was like, okay, this is going to be way too big for one book, and we're going to have to do a trilogy. So, which I always love when you hear that somebody's decided. That always
happens.
Yeah.
It always happens.
So that makes me happy. I like it when I find somebody that I love and they decide to just keep on going.
Unfortunately, that seems to be my thing. Like, I'm a series writer. I can't do a standalone. I've never been able to do a standalone. In fact, the secret surprise, because you're actually going to be my 23rd guest of the show, I'm actually going to send you one of my books that's not been published yet. No one's read it except my editor. So you're going to get to read it's Celtic Scottish myths, but they come to Redding, California.
Oh.
So it's a bit of like America's sort of smacking into Scotland and Scotland's power. There's a little bit of Welsh witches in there as well.
Love. This sounds good.
I'm going to send that over to you today, and you can have a sneak read.
Awesome.
Yeah, because I like sharing it, because if you share your work, it helps to sort of I always say it widens everyone's opinions and views, and it can help really make this author world more inclusive.
Yes.
And at least that's what a lot of me and the other bestsellers are trying to do, is make this a very inclusive world and just allow everyone to have a voice and their voice to be heard. So, so I thought that would be kind of cool to drop that on you.
I'm so excited. Can I ask you a question? Can we flip the table for 1 second?
Oh yeah, of course. This is a conversation, not an interview.
Okay, so
you can go for it.
Now, let me ask you a question. I know you said that this is does the book take place in California? Is that where the book is taking place, your book?
Yeah.
Okay, so now do you find that
it takes place in Redding, California?
Okay, so do you find that you being a writer, you like to write about places that you want to either be or places that you want to travel to? Like, do you find that that's something that kind of helps you? Like, I feel like I almost...
The earliest part of my career, I actually wrote 90% of my work from places I lived. Because I've traveled a lot. Mm-hmm. I'm a bit of a gypsy. I never stay in one place for very long. Yep. I tend to I always say at my hubby, we've got to move somewhere else. So I need to experience life everywhere.
Yeah.
He hates it. Trust me. We were like on like the 20th home or something. And he's like, girl, you need to get roots. Like driving me beyond mad. So I love to write. And I've dragged him to the States, bless him. I actually was his translator in the States, which is hugely funny. And we went up to California and I spent time with my friend who lives in Redding. But I never got to Redding because I only had a week. So I was a week in Los Angeles. You can spend your entire life in Los Angeles and never do everything.
Yeah.
And, he was like telling me all about Redding and he was telling me all about this amazing stuff. And I fell in love with Redding. And Redding is a place that I would probably spend quite a number of months living.
Yeah.
I think if I continue my gypsy lifestyle. But yeah, I think because I kind of lived that area through him.
Yeah.
And it was the same. I had a lot of friends who lived in Chicago and who lived in the north, kind of more into Canada. And my actual co-author is from Canada.
Yeah.
So he wrote a lot of that side of things. And then I wrote the Scottish side. And it was a really good mix. So when I came to write The Orchid Guild, it's kind of funny. I wrote it in ICU.
Yep.
Which a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah.
Because I got sepsis in my jaw last year.
Oh, God.
And they had to take my jaw joints out. And they kept me in. I was in and out of the hospital for 6 months. I went from 56 kilos to 32 kilos.
Oh, my gosh.
6 months. And then I woke up in ICU. Yeah, it was scary. It was really scary, actually. Woke up in ICU and I'm like, I gotta write. Like, I had no energy. I was probably a lot paler than I am now. And I just dove in and I started writing it. I'd been plotting it for years.
Yeah.
But I had never gotten that urge to just write it. But the idea of what Susie goes through in the story and the pain, I needed to actually be in pain to get across that pain and that passion into the novel.
Yeah.
And it came out within about, I wrote it in 3 weeks because I didn't sleep for 3 weeks.
Wow.
Normally a novel will take me 6 to 9 months, but I wrote it in 3 weeks because I didn't sleep for 3 weeks. I was like, the drugs they give you for dealing with sepsis is not pleasant.
Yeah.
So I was a bit like a zombie. I was just like wide awake all the time. And the nurses used to tease me. They're like, wait, are you not burnt the computer out? Yeah, because they would come through and I would still be typing away. And I actually I have no letters now. When I look at my keyboard, I can't actually make out what all the letters are because I wrote them off.
You got to get those little
from
stickers.
Writing so much. It's that bad. My husband's, I'm going to have to get stickers. And my husband started looking at it and he's like, we might need to replace that computer soon, Crystal. I've gone through 11 laptops because I am not lucky with electronics. So this one, touch wood, has lasted a really long time and it has to keep going. But yeah, no, I love it. And I've written all kinds of books. I've written Carla, which I think you would adore. It's set in Shetland.
Yeah.
And it surrounds the myths of the Vikings, the Viking mythology. So Carla is actually an immortal who dies, is badly betrayed, and she dies, and she comes back to life. And she's no longer this teenage book reviewer on YouTube. She's got to live this entirely different life. She's got to learn how to fight with swords, and she's got to protect herself because she's part of a prophecy, and if she dies, she could let all these evil Norse gods out onto the world. And she has to learn to love again because this guy breaks her heart in so many different ways. And the cruel part is the guy that actually betrays her to make her immortal, that's his first love and he can't let go of her. So he has a little bit of a stalking issue, but it's a really kind of fun, there's a lot of jokes in there too because I couldn't help myself. I'm a bit sarcastic joker.
It sounds awesome.
And my husband doesn't normally read anything I write, but he read it. and he's like, you could have done without the first 125 pages. Because he didn't like the young girl coming of age story part. He hated that part. He's like, I like the Norse gods. They're funny. That was the only thing that entertained him. So he was like, can I just read the Norse god parts and just like forget about this girl? Total guy response, I suppose.
Yeah.
So yeah, I recommend it because it's a very different mythology kind of feel to it, and it's got different kind of magic. It's more Viking magic than it is what they would call pagan magic.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's a bit different, and Vikings usually get painted as the bad guys, so it's always good to have a different perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
So when you go to bookstores, whether it's online or in person, what genre would you say you're drawn to the most? Like, where would you go instantly?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I think mythology and folklore. I really
Yeah, maybe we should have warned you before the podcast. It's not easy questions.
Yeah, no, I really think that I would probably be over in, I really love mythology and folklore. I have so many books, just tons and tons on that subject. I tend to really like to read those physical books. Like if I'm going to read a physical book, I love anything like that.
Yeah.
Like that is definitely my go-to. Same with any sort of book. Like I love looking at spell books and things like that. I'm really visual. I love visual stuff. So that's definitely where I would probably be found at a bookstore. In the spirituality.
So here's a harder question. This is the hardest question I ask every reader.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Has there ever been a book that you've picked up and asked yourself, what on earth was I thinking? Why am I reading this?
Yes. Yeah. I've read a couple. I tend to, if I don't like a book, I tend to put it down and not pick it back up. And I always try to give it its fair shake, getting at least 5 chapters to 6 chapters in, before I decide that I just don't like it. I tend not to like books that are written in first person. I don't know what that is about me. I don't like being inside the character's head like that. So there's been some books that are, I know a lot of people absolutely love that I just don't like because I don't like the first person point of view. Like I like descriptions and I like hearing from that narrator that's outside of the character. So there's some books that have come out recently that I've I don't want to bash them, so I don't really want to say, but I've they were these big books that were huge on like the New York bestsellers list and stuff, and I'm just like I even read through one completely, and at the end I was just like, what? Like, I don't understand how this got so much hype. Like,
what was I thinking?
Yeah, why did I finish this? Like, and I think it has a lot to do with personal preference. I think that you are always going to have people who love your stuff, and you're always going to have people who hate your stuff. And I think that comes with anything in life. Like, definitely from an artist perspective, there's always people that love my art, and there's always people who just do not like it, and it just doesn't resonate with them. And I think that's the same way it is with writing too. I think that there are people who can really fall into what you write, and there's just people that just can't, and that's personal preference. And I think that a lot of times, us as human beings really need to step back before we leave a review, I think, on people's books. Like I said, even this one that I liked, that I didn't like this much.
That is very true.
Yeah. And I would not give it a bad review because I would say 3 stars only because I'm not a big fan of first person. And that doesn't mean that this book isn't going to be absolutely loved by other people. Like that, it obviously is. It made the #1 bestseller in the New York Times, but it's just not. It just doesn't resonate with me because I don't like that, And it's going to be like that with, no matter what you write, you're never going to please everybody. And I think that that's something that we, as authors, have to kind of really not let our feelings get hurt when we have those bad reviews or those bad, people who pick the book up and are just like, I can't finish this, because we've had that experience too as readers.
Yeah. I think I'm more careful though. If it's like a book that I just couldn't finish, I'm very open and honest and say this is over my head, or this is something that I have no understanding of. I hate the ones that said don't read it, I couldn't read it, or didn't finish, and no explanation as to why. I think those reviews actually really kind of like take the confidence out of the author, and I kind of almost feel bad. I've had a few of those, and I know a lot of my friends has had them. And it really kind of makes you wonder, like, what did I do so wrong to offend you that, you just threw the book down and it's like, oh, no.
But then it might have been somebody
your mind kind of goes over all that when you're trying to think.
Yeah. And then, but you've got to remember too, that this might be somebody who doesn't normally like fiction, and they picked up a book that they, maybe they're a romance reader, and they just were like, oh, well, this seems like it has some sort of like romantic essence to it. And then they pick it up and it's a fantasy novel that has a little bit of a backstory of love in it, but it's not a romance novel. So therefore they're not going to like it. I mean, I think that
exactly,
that is definitely what happens.
I think because I didn't know marketing too, which was a bit of a, marketing got me down.
Yeah.
Because at the time when I first released Carla, I didn't understand it. So I just targeted my original readers.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, my original readers were all diehard romance fans.
Yeah.
So I did suffer quite a bit with Carla. And I feel kind of sorry for the book, because the book didn't really get a good shake because I didn't know how to get it into that audience.
Have you ever thought about
So I kind of feel for it.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about rebranding it? I know I've seen this happen a lot where an author switches a genre in a way, and their first book in that switch is a bomb because of exactly what you say. And then I've heard that it's a really good idea to take that book back, recover it, give it a new cover, and re-release it. Because if you do that, then you will start picking up the people who would like those things.
I have actually thought about it. I left the publisher kind of not that long ago because it was a YA, and they kind of put a non-YA cover on it. They put an adult cover on it. Which I didn't feel comfortable with. I think it was a very missell. So I left, and I haven't actually re-released it. But it is like a book that I'm sort of sitting on, and I'm thinking at some point I'll just re-release it because it's a very Hollywood. Apparently, it's a very Hollywood style of writing that I've never done before. So I'm kind of aware of that, and I think I will continue that series on, because me and my co-author, we plotted out 32 books for that series.
Yep.
So we have to kind of find the right groove in order to keep it going. And so when book one bombed, we kind of said, well, we'll take a few steps back and we'll really think about it, and then maybe we'll try again at a different date. But we just haven't gotten around to really kind of figuring out how we're going to move forward with it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about authors. It's kind of like playing a game of chess. You just kind of need to work out when you're going to make your move and how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. And...
So let's go into your writings.
Yeah.
So this is the part of the podcast where we talk about your writing, and we talk about the things that like connects you, sort of very, very new beginning writers out there into writing. It gets them excited and helps them a bit along the way, because many different perspectives kind of builds that world for them. So when you came to write the sort of darker elements and the dangerous parts of your story, how did you go about creating the story? Was it through music? Did you watch stuff? Were you just reading stuff and it came to you, or did it just all come to you in one go?
I guess it was a little bit of a couple different things. One of them being that, researching and doing all the things that I was doing for that shop, and diving so deeply into the rituals of witchcraft, and it sparked my interest, and I then wanted to learn more about witchcraft in general and in the history of the world, really. And I started obviously researching the Salem witch trials, and I have a great ancestor that was part of that. And so I looked through some of our history that we had from our family, and then I started, diving into more of, where this whole witch hysteria had come from. And I realized that it had come over from, Scotland. It actually had come from the Scottish witch trials. And I didn't really know much about them because we're not taught that in school. It's not, we're taught the witch trials in the United States, which is nothing compared to the witch trials in Scotland. Like, it's really surprising to me that they didn't go further into talking more about this in school, because it's very sad. Like, it is extremely sad that we did not know that over here there was, a handful of people that were executed, where over there you had thousands. And it's just insane that we don't know that. Like, as people, it's not part of our culture, so we're not being taught that. So that really got me. I got really into reading about it. And that was definitely part of my inspiration for the story was, there's a story to be told, and one of my villain in the story is an actual woman. Her name was Margaret Aikens. And she was a woman who actually, to try to save herself, had appointed out 300 other women to be hung. And she ended up being one of the biggest killers of women in this whole thing, because she didn't want to die. So she started, hey, I can tell a witch by the mark in her eyes. And so they drag her around with them to all these different villages, and she would just start pointing people out, and they would be, tried and executed. And this was, in my mind, she is a villain in history. Like, no matter what her person, even if, you're trying to save yourself, being this person that is willing to sacrifice all these other people is, obviously a villain in history. And so I chose her to be the villain in my story.
Yeah, condemning them.
Yeah. And so she was definitely, that whole historical events were what played a huge role in the writing of the book.
I like that, and I like the fact that you really tied it into the history too, and I think that's a really kind of interesting way about going about it. So what inspired you? I mean, do you feel like fantasy was just in your blood that you had to tell it? Or did you feel like you were just drawn to fantasy and you were inspired to add your writing voice to that genre?
Definitely drawn to fantasy. I've always loved anything fantastical, even as a kid. Like, I love just the thought of magic being real and out in the world just makes me giddy. I do have a background in film. I actually went to college to be a director. And I took many courses in screenwriting. So, and I'd written a couple of screenplays. And so my writing, when you read it, is definitely, I have a very kind of Hollywood way of writing too. Like, I'm big into descriptions. Like, I love describing a scene. Like, that's my favorite part of writing. I love telling how things smelled and looked and felt. And like, I just really want to pull that reader right into the moment, so they feel like they're sitting in the middle of this movie, playing out in their heads. So yeah, it definitely fiction, and definitely was, I think that me being, having that background in film really helped with my writing. It's a totally different writing style, obviously. When you're writing a script, you're writing very basic, like, you just quick description of the room, then it's pretty much all dialogue. So it's different, but it definitely helps. And
I know it well.
Yeah. So I definitely like, I think I like writing novels better than scripts. For sure. Because I really like diving into the details.
Yeah, so. Most people do. I find it funny because I went from novels to well, I actually went from wrestling script writing, which is totally different from screenwriting. Mm-hmm. And then I went into novels, and then I went into screenwriting. So I've kind of done the full circle as well. Yep. Wrestling writing is very different. You've got bullet points on a piece of paper, and then you have to go sell it verbally to somebody. So yeah, I thought it was incredible to see the differences in worlds, and I think that's why I did it, was just so that I would experience the different worlds and universes.
Yeah.
So when you put your book together, is it, well, I'm assuming it'll be like a movie, but is it like a movie for you, or is it like a jigsaw puzzle that you're putting together? How would you best describe it to the writers out there?
It definitely was like a movie to me. I had the scenes playing out in my head, and I'd write them down. One of the things that I think helped me out a lot as being a first-time writer is I did not go back and rewrite anything on my first go. I just kept writing, and right. I did one of my absolute favorite tools that I cannot recommend enough is I got this app called NeuroReader, and it reads what you've written back to you. And that was the only thing I did. So when I finished writing like 5 pages, I'd listen to it. I'd like listen to it, have it read back to me. And then I'd be like, did that make sense? Did that all flow well? And then if I felt like there was some real big problem, I'd fix it. But if it was just a lot of little things, I was like, I'll get that when I come back. And then I just kept on doing that all the way through until I finished the book. And then I used that same app to listen to the book all the way through. And then I did it one more time, each chapter. I fixed all the grammatical mistakes, anything that seemed like it was either overwritten, underwritten, needed a little bit of tweaking here and there. I did that. And I'm using it again right now with my editor. So I do my editing. I get my edits back. I do my editing. I listen. I go back and fix anything that I hear that might be a mistake. And then I pass it back in. So, and I really think that is an excellent way for new writers especially, to get a good grip on their flow, because that's one of the biggest problems I think that writers can have, is that their flow gets messed up if they add something in that, a description that's just a little too long, and then it disrupts your flow. And then you're like, oh, well, that just took me out of the moment. Like, I need to get rid of that. And like, you can hear that when you listen, like when you're listening to it versus reading it, it's different.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, it's very good for dyslexic writers as well. I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize is dyslexic writers sometimes need to actually hear what they've written, so that they can pick out the mistakes, or their mistakes at least stick out to them in a more kind of obvious way.
Yeah,
especially when it comes to flow and character development and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I get my Word document to read back to me quite a lot for that reason, because I'm listening to see if I can pick up something too. So that's actually really good.
Yeah.
Is there a character in your current book that you wish you could have written more about?
Yes. So I have different time periods throughout my book. There's four different time periods, and the 1940s, there's 2 characters. One is named Artemis, and the other one is Elizabeth. And I really loved the story between the 2. It's not a love story between them. It's a mentor story. And that is actually going to be picked up in book 2, because I love their dynamic so much that I just wanted to write more on it. So that is for sure 100% those 2.
That's really good. Yeah.
And so I decided that they were the next characters to come into play, and I wanted to do a lot more with them.
So entering into your life. Now, this is the part that all the listeners get really excited about, because they love to learn about our lives. I think it's like celebrity gossip, but almost for readers, if you get my drift. We're like the celebrities, and so it's like keeping up with the authors, I think they should call this part. But this is our life portion. So what's the first thing you do when you want to de-stress from editing, writing, painting, when you just want to find you for 5 minutes?
I walk. So we live really, really rural. Like, there's only like 3 houses around us for miles and miles. We live out in the middle of the woods, and on a dirt road that's like a 1-lane dirt road. And so what I do is I walk up to a lake that's about 2.5 miles from our house, and there's nobody that lives on this lake. It's just a lake in the middle of the woods. And I go and I sit there and I de-stress. It's my grounding place, I call it. and then I walk back. So it's about a 5-mile walk altogether, but it's what I need to get it's what I need to get my head back into like reality a lot. And just getting that little bit of exercise and, just being out in nature really, really does it for me.
So what hobbies do you enjoy? And is there ones that you wish you could explore more of?
Yes. So I'm like you. I dabble in almost everything artistic and artsy and craftsy. I really, really want to learn how to do some weaving. That's like my big thing that I want to do right now. For wall hangings, because
Scotland's good for that. Yeah, and definitely.
I love fiber arts. Like I love felting and crocheting and all that kind of stuff. So I got a little mini loom, and it's something that I want to try doing this summer, is trying my hand at making some maybe small wall hangings or something like that. But yeah, I really love anything arts and crafts. I do lots of like refinishing of furniture and, obviously painting and things like that. But I just like, and I'm huge into retro antique stuff. Like I love going out and finding these little garage sales that have, things from like the 1950s and 60s in them. And I always buy them up and put them somewhere on a shelf at my house because I just think they're so fun.
Yeah, I know. It's, to be honest, if I could, I would fill my house with antiques, but my husband is not a fan of antiques, so I don't get to do that very often. So yeah. So we've, like I'm very crafty, as you were saying. So is there other crafts that you would like to try, or like do you feel like you've experienced all that is on offer for quilts, like, or crafting and stuff like that, for like working with fabrics and things? Or like do you think you've explored this entire kind of creative process and you're looking to try something else in the crafting world? Or is there more that it's kind of a weird world, because I look on crafting as you've got your painting, your diamond painting, your cross stitching, your quilting, your embroidery, and your fabrics. So for me, like I always wonder if other people kind of get into different kinds and want to explore different kinds. So that's one of the ones I like asking about. And it's weird that like I like asking about it because my grandmother was professional. I still actually cross stitch. It's my go-to to chill myself out and just calm my brain down and get things back to where they need to be, especially when I'm writing long periods of time, and particularly if I'm in a high stress situation. Crafting and fabrics and material and stuff's my way to go. We have lost Jessica for a second. I'm sure she will be back, and we'll finish off with our final couple of questions. But in the meantime, we can just remind everybody to sign up for the Jessica Dodge newsletter so that you can be notified of the release of The Forgotten Witch upon its release date. Plus, you can also get up-to-date information on her second novel as it's coming and when they're starting to do the promotion for that. And also, I believe you can actually win swag to do with the book. And those are always the best because, like, you have that kind of little thing that you can keep. And I do love those. They're so special kind of to have when you know that that this book's coming out and is going to be part of a series, and it gets you more excited for it. So yeah, so make sure that you do that, and there's so much more that you can learn about this author by sort of looking at her art and her pictures, and you can As she mentioned, she has an Etsy store, so you can look to see about spell boxes if you really want to get into the mood of this kind of story and this kind of book. And so I think we've lost Jessica. So I will call an end to the podcast. And I want to thank Jessica for coming. It's been a great pleasure. I think she's having some technical difficulties right now. But I will remind you all to check out the Forgotten Witch and see where it takes us. Thank you all for coming to the Book and Life podcast. And I can't wait to see you guys again next week, where we will be talking to another guest. Of course, I've mixed up the guests, but we'll have Maya on. And I'm sure she's going to have some incredible insights to writing and her life and different things. And so I shall say goodbye for now.